This is Peter.
And this is Tom.
And you're listening to History Teachers Talking Podcasts. All right, this is Peter Zablocki and Thomas Reska, and welcome back to our podcast. Tom, what are we talking about today?
Well, today we decided to discuss an individual from our very own home state of New Jersey. We're going to look at the, what's he called, the magician of Menlo Park, right? We're looking about the man, the myth, and the legend of Thomas Edison.
That's right. Your namesake over there.
Sure.
So, just so we know, we literally recorded like half of this, and something went wrong, and now we have to re-record half of it, which stinks. But we got this. Anyway,
it happens. See, we don't give up.
We don't give up, even though we're extremely tired right now, and we're like, "Dang it, we just talked about Thomas Edison for like 20 minutes." But it's okay. We're going to talk about him again. We're not giving up, right? No surrender here.
No.
So,
Eye of the tiger. Let's go.
That's right. Actually, I heard that today. It was on the radio.
Really?
So, yeah.
Anyway, I'm sorry. We're getting.
Well, I guess we listen to different radio stations. I mean, I don't know what you listen to, but I mean, I listen to like CBS, FM. I listen to old stuff.
I listen to this crazy thing you might not know, Pete. It's called sports. and sports radio. I usually listen to that.
You got me there. All right. You know what? You win, brother. All right. So we are going to talk about Thomas Edison today, but we're also going to talk about Nikola Tesla as well. And I think the culmination of today's episode, which we did not get to before stopped recording, is this war of the currents between the two. So this shouldn't be the longest podcast. However, I think it should provide you guys with like a decent idea of who Thomas Edison was, as well as who Nikola Tesla was, more or less, and this more
this
important
rivalry war of the currents, which there was actually a movie. They made actually a movie about it too.
Really, it was like a made-for-TV movie or like a movie?
Yeah, made for TV called War of the Currents.
Wow, how original!
Very original, yeah.
Nuts. All right, Thomas Edison, guys. Thomas Edison is from New Jersey. However, he was not born in New Jersey. He was born in Canada, and the reason for that is because
his dad was born in Canada. He was born in Ohio.
Oh, yeah, you're right. He was born in Ohio. My bad. Sorry. His dad was born in Canada, and that's because his grandfather was actually a loyalist during the American Revolutionary War, and he ran away from New Jersey to Canada, where his son was born, Thomas Edison's father. And then his father, you're right, moved him to Ohio, which is where Thomas Alva Edison was born in 1847. So this guy eventually becomes known as the quintessential, the most known, celebrated American inventor. However, out of these like 1,093 U.S. patents that he has in his name, most of these deal with inventions that simply improved upon other inventions. Like, right?
Yeah, well, he basically had this like think tank where all these individuals would come up with ideas, would work on things. He controlled it though. He really guided them on their research and what they were going to do, but he also controlled the patents of what these inventors created. So they might have actually come up with the ideas and things of that nature, but he owns it. He owns the idea.
I was just going
to say that because he's the one that financed all of it. So when you're paying for it, that's why he's like an American inventor. He's a living embodiment of like capitalism. Because he's a businessman first, which we'll get to. We look at some of his early life. Yep. Thomas Edison is a businessman. He's also a brilliant inventor, yes, but he's a businessman. And one reason why he is still so well known is because he got his name out there. Unlike Tesla, who didn't really do that as much.
No, absolutely. And Tesla's a little younger, and also Tesla at one point works for Thomas Edison. Like Thomas Edison is like the the Jedi Master, and Tesla's like the angry Anakin.
The Padawan that goes to the dark side.
Yeah, that's right. So Thomas Edison, growing up, and I did not know this until I started doing this research. He has no formal schooling whatsoever.
No,
right?
Only for a few months. He actually was taught school by his mother, who was a school teacher. And he was a very curious child. He read a lot of things on his own, and he was always fascinated by technology. They said he's always spent a lot of hours doing like experiments of his own at home. He was really still out of it, was controlled by his mother, but also self-taught.
Yeah, lots of reading, he was so well read by the age of 12 that a lot of people would read it. And the stuff he was reading was like collegial stuff. At one point, I don't know if you read this story where he attempted to see if he could like sit on eggs and see if he could hatch them, but he winds up crushing them.
that's what would happen, right?
Yeah, they said actually, like that. You're right. They said it like in his life there was like an odd, like they didn't call it a fetish, but they're like he was like weirdly into like not sadistic things, but like for example when he created, and because we can tell you guys now, but he invented the first ever really sound recording machine, the phonograph, which was the precursor to the record player. He also winds up inventing the first real motion picture camera. And movies as we know them, the idea of Hollywood really stems from Thomas
Edison,
Edison,
yeah.
yeah, who starts that in New Jersey. And he kind of controls the whole market. The TV making market is controlled by him because he invents the motion picture camera. And a lot of these producers wind up moving to the West Coast to what becomes known as Hollywood to escape Thomas Edison's clutches because they feel like that he has too much power over these inventions that he, invented. They kind of don't want to pay him to use some of this
Yeah, so they
technology.
just go to the West Coast.
Yeah, they're like, I'm just going to go to West Coast. We'll do our thing over there. And that's kind of why we have the movie industry over there. But the reason I kind of brought this up is because while he created this motion picture camera, he found out that they were going to kill an elephant. Elephant was too old, so they decided they were going to poison a local zoo was going to wind up
Oh yeah,
killing this elephant. And he suggested to electrocute this elephant.
well, there was two
And
reasons for that too. He also wanted to show, didn't he want to kill the elephant with AC current? Wasn't that the
yes,
main thing? Because he was
yep,
so. We'll get to that more. It's part of the current wars. He basically wanted to show the dangers in
of
his
AC current.
mind of AC current. So he was going to basically wanted to prove his point. The elephant's name was Topsy, and the
Yeah,
elephant was
and
actually electrocuted
he
at
and he
Coney Island,
recorded it.
1903.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
he was
that,
like excited to go and record that. Like, there's a short movie by Thomas Edison about an elephant like
you
being
actually you
electrocuted
could actually go to certain places and put like a quarter or whatever, probably less than that,
and
in a
watch it happen.
machine and like turn the dial play, and you can actually watch this elephant get electrocuted. And people are like, "Oh, this is awesome!" But
Yeah,
when
like,
you
oh my
think about it,
god,
you're watching this elephant get electrocuted. What are you talking about? So,
it's nuts, nuts.
because he wanted
But
to
that's
really discredit alternating current, and also because he wanted to show what his movie cameras could do.
Yep. So we will talk about in a little bit about this DC AC which as you
Not the
know,
band, not the band.
not the band. However, as we did point out before we got cut off and have to re-record this, AC/DC actually, the band did get inspiration from
Yeah.
these two men.
You're not going to
And
hear
what?
it, but Peter was singing a bunch of AC/DC songs too.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah.
But you're
So
not
there's
going to
some
hear
Back
that
in Black over here.
on,
No.
on this version.
Um, however, Thomas Edison, growing up again, self-taught, 1800s. Mom teaches him everything. Super curious kid. Kind of becomes an entrepreneur really early in his life. He winds up by the age of 12. He first of all goes deaf. Right? How does that happen?
Well, they believe he was never really a healthy kid, always had health problems, but he had a bout of scarlet fever, and it kind of just really gave him a lot of ear infections. He wound up losing his hearing in one ear and could barely hear out of the other. And they said because of that, he would always still like listen to music by a music player or piano, so he would actually clamp his teeth onto the wood of the piano and stuff like that. So his skull and his teeth would actually absorb the sound that would help him to hear things. That's one reason why he worked on a lot of these hearing devices and stuff like that later on. And as he got older, he believed that his hearing loss is what allowed him to like avoid distractions, allowed him to work more easily on his work because he couldn't hear anything that was going to distract him. He just focuses what he's doing and just have, be in his own little world almost.
Yep. I also read somewhere lately that some people believe he might have had an ADHD.
A
I don't know
form
if
of
you read.
ADHD. Yeah, I saw
Yep.
that. It's possible.
So yeah, he kind of, very entrepreneur in a sense that his early career, he winds up selling candy, newspapers, and other things at train
But
stations. Yeah.
vegetables. And he was turning a lot of
Vegetables,
profit. And he said by
a
13
lot of
he's
profit.
turning a profit like $50 a week. And in the 1800s, that's
Oh
good
yeah,
money.
no. And he was like 13. That's
Yeah, that's
nuts.
really good money for a 13-year-old.
Yeah. And that's where kind of he gets into become a telegraph operator, which is where
Yeah.
his love for electricity stems. And how does that come about, Tom?
Well, what happened was he was working, like you said, at that train station, and he saved this 3-year-old boy's name, a 3-year-old boy by the name of Jimmy McKenzie, from being struck by a runaway train. Jimmy's father was actually the station agent, and he was so grateful that he trained Edison to be a telegraph operator. And that's really what he started doing for a while, really, for a number of
Yeah.
years.
Yeah, he self-taught himself the Morse code and he started actually moving to different companies and different train companies, but he became kind of like the master of the telegram. And he also started tinkering with these things little by little, little by little. he at one point starts his own newspaper that he winds up selling. So the Grand Trunk Herald, which he winds up selling out of like the back of this train, out of on this like secondhand printing press he buys from somebody. He is continuously figuring out ways to make money. I mean, ultimately, they said that he formed like 14 companies, including General Electric, which is obviously to this day
Yeah, one of
one
the
of the biggest
biggest
companies
companies.
in the
Yeah, and
world.
that all came from him selling newspapers and stuff like that out of the
Yeah.
back of his trunk.
And then really his real money comes from at the age of 19, he moves to Kentucky. And with his experience with telegrams, he gets hired by the most prestigious company when it comes to communications, and that is Western Union.
The Google of the day. Everyone wants to work there.
Yep.
It's the perks, the benefits, the prestige, the pay.
Yep. And that's he actually winds up stealing a lot of engineers from Western Union eventually when he opens up his own Menlo Park laboratory. He's kind of like, hey, come work for me. Um, but yeah, like you said, this was the Google, the Apple. This was the most prestigious, like trendy company you could work for. And when he works there, he actually works nights, so that way he could spend a lot of his time reading and experimenting. He's continuously trying to experiment with not only um, the telegram itself, which becomes his first big invention, but also batteries. And batteries are important and become important because he's trying to create like this, really like sufficient rechargeable battery. The first cars that are created in the world, a lot of people don't realize this, but they ran on batteries. They did not run on combustible. Blah, blah.
Combustion
Yeah, I
engines.
can't say combustion. I don't know why. Combustible. Engines.
Combustion.
Dang
Just
it.
there you go. Combustion.
Combustion engines. I got it.
Combustion engines. That's it. You
Yes.
got it.
All right. Thanks, man. So that was Model T Ford. Before that, they were ran on batteries. And Tom, as when you and I talked about this, you said that it's probably like reminiscent of like those little cars
Yeah,
that our
the
kids drive.
power. Yeah, the
Yeah. Yeah.
power
Yeah.
wheels, whatever. That you just
See,
drive up
see,
and down.
you can't. Yeah, you're having issues too. But yes. So but his batteries leaked a lot and they would like lose power really quickly. So he's kind of like
Yeah,
thinking like,
they
hey,
couldn't
like
hold the charge at all. A lot of times they were
exactly
leaking. He would wind up. I know he got fired from one of his jobs because the battery, the sulfuric acid, leaked through the
leaked through the
floor, and
floor.
it
Yeah.
actually went over his boss's desk and stuff like that. And they're like, "That's it, you're gone."
Yeah. They're like, you need to
So,
stop like tinkering with stuff. You're supposed to be working. Yeah, that
especially
happened at Western Union.
when you're getting acid everywhere.
It's nuts.
It's a
Um,
little dangerous.
so he winds up leaving Western Union. He kind of befriends this other inventor, and this inventor lets him like live and kind of work in his basement in Elizabeth, New Jersey. And he gets enough money where he comes up with this invention that really kind of puts Thomas Edison on the map. He's like early 20s, he's a young guy. What he does is at this time, telephone's not really a thing yet. It's about to become a thing, but telegram is huge. The problem is that while there's so much telegram wire running across the United States, and that is the number one means of communication, that is the email of its time, 100%. The problem is that the wires could only send one transmission, one telegram at a time, which means that they become congested really quickly. Well, Thomas Edison creates a new form of a telegraph. What is it called?
A
The
quadruplex telegraph.
quadruplex. So what
It's
does it
basically
do?
could basically send four at a time, right? Wasn't that
Yep.
basically what it could do?
Yep.
And which is resolute, which is like just revolutionary at the time. Now you have four times the speed, four times. This is like the 4G. If you
Yeah,
want to use
right.
like
Of
those
its time.
terms.
So you
So
have four messages running on the same exact wire, which is why people like this is amazing. You don't have to rewire all of the United States. It just means that this new telegraph will send a different coded message where you could have like a highway, four lanes basically running. And this makes him a lot of money. Because
yeah,
actually his old boss, Western Union, is what buys the telegraph
this
from
is
him.
their first big financial success. This is what allows him really to expand on his Menlo Park facility when it winds up becoming like a size of like several city blocks.
Yep.
This is that one big score he needs to really cement himself and his
Yep.
company as
Yep.
this inventing firm, this think tank.
Yep, Menlo Park in New Jersey. I was actually at Henry Ford's museum, Dearborn, Michigan, a couple years ago, and he has one of the buildings from Menlo Park in at the museum because he's got like this little American
Yeah,
city
it was like reconstructed there, right?
reconstructed it. And the only way that because they were friends eventually, Thomas Edison and Henry Ford, And the only way that Thomas Edison would allow him to move one of the homes over there is if he moved New Jersey soil with it. So, these people are so filthy rich in like early 1900s. He's like, sure, I don't mind. So they like truckloads of literally New Jersey dirt were moved over to Michigan so that way they could move over and like reconstruct one of Edison's buildings.
That's right. Gotta love that New Jersey dirt, right? New
Right.
Jersey, born and raised.
Do you know that
He wasn't, but
no, he wasn't. No. But I
yeah.
mean,
And
he was a
never mind
Jersey
that.
boy. He was definitely
Yeah,
a
he
Jersey
was
boy.
Jersey boy. There you go. Yeah.
But
He called
also
it.
another
He,
thing
he
that's kind of
called it
weird,
Taylor ham.
right? Yeah, he didn't call it pork. Is it pork roll?
Pork roll. No, it's Taylor ham. Taylor.
Taylor ham. Come on, we know it. We know it. Another thing that's kind of weird is I don't know if you knew this with what's his name, Henry Ford. Henry Ford asked Edison's son that as Edison is dying to literally put. Did you hear this? To put like a little tube by his mouth and like catch his last breath.
I did hear that. Yeah, like
and then like put a cork on it, and they did, and that's actually at Ford's museum, like Thomas Edison's last breath. I'm like, that's a little
macabre, but yeah.
Yeah, I would say, right? So he makes his money from this quadruplex telegraph, and then he starts to like hire these inventors that you mentioned at the beginning, the people that basically work for him. Like, it's not like he's inventing these things; his like brand is inventing these things. And two things he really kind of spends most of his time on here, two big inventions. Well, before we get into the light bulb, which we should mention, he does not invent the light bulb. He buys that patent and improves upon it.
He basically he invents the filament inside for the most part,
which allows it to burn for longer without dying. That's basically what makes it better. Yeah. But before that, let's start with the phonograph. I by no means am going to pretend that I know much about science or physics or anything like that, or even like sound waves. But the basic premise is that he improves upon this idea of a microphone. It's like a carbon transmitter that he puts into a microphone where you speak to this horn looking thing. And as you speak to this horn, it is connected through a tube to a machine that has these needles. And there's also like this cartridge thing. I would say it's not even a cartridge. I would say it's like a roll almost. And what happens is there's tinfoil around this roll or this cylinder. And as you're speaking, your voice vibrations move these needles. And these needles puncture this tinfoil around this like grooved cylinder. And what it does is it basically records your vibrations, your sound vibrations. And when you put the cylinder back into a different machine and you start spinning it while applying certain pressure on it, it just recreates your sound. This is the first ever recording device for sound.
Sound. It's a big deal because before this, if something was said, that was it. It was said. I mean, there was no way to record it. You couldn't. It would be other people saying it. But it was gone. And this was in the 1880s, 1870s, 1880s. So imagine this is not that long from this is a couple of years earlier we talking about, right? You could have recorded Lincoln giving the Gettysburg Address.
Yep, literally like 10 years earlier.
Just think of all the speeches that you hear now or just listen to a podcast, anyone's podcast, not just this one, or listen to the radio. That wouldn't be possible without this early technology of actually recording the voices.
Yeah, without
and it wasn't there. You didn't hear people's voices before this. People didn't hear their own voice.
Yeah. Which is insane. I mean, again, he was so close, right? Like, I mean, he invented this like a decade after Lincoln.
Oh, come on. Why couldn't you do a little sooner? Let's go, man.
I know. We could have heard.
You were alive at the same time.
Slacker.
Slacker.
Hey. Right? You know what the first thing he said he recorded, by the way? Mary had a little lamb.
There is a recording of him actually
saying it. You could hear it.
Yeah.
Which is kind of crazy. So that's the first thing that he really that's what really makes. I mean, he has Washington Post describes Edison as a genius after this point. It's like, oh my gosh, he figured out how to.
Senators, the president, they're all going crazy.
Alexander Graham Bell's like, oh man, this is pretty cool. And this is the guy that invents the telephone, but he's like, yeah, this is pretty cool. The president meets with him and they like show it to the president. Everyone's like, this is insane what this guy just created. The other thing he does is he actually improves on a microphone design for telephones. And what he puts into that telephone, like, your good old rotary phones, uh, he creates like a transmitter that allows and basically improves the microphone in telephones. And that's used in phones until 1980s. And he does this in like 1876, this technology, just by tweaking some things. We more or less covered movies already. Let's get
Yeah,
into
you talk about all
the
that.
electric light, because this is also where Nikola Tesla comes into the picture a little
Yeah, and
bit.
this is what he's probably. I know he's known for the phonograph, obviously a lot of other things, but the light
Yep.
bulb, that's what people really associate with Thomas
Yep.
Edison, I would say.
So when he creates, or rather improves upon this light bulb, he does this by, again, buying someone else's patent. He simply improves on it, and then he creates this Edison Electric Light Company, which is really the key, what he really wants now. He has a bulb that's going to last a long time. The key is, how do you generate the electricity to basically make sure that he could put his own bulbs and light up cities. Like, this is so much money, like he wants to be the guy that will generate the electricity
Yeah,
and basically turn street lamps that were operated by gas and oil based lighting into
to
his
electric. Yeah,
bulbs,
in
electric.
private houses as well. So he wants to
Yep.
do. The biggest thing was it was as long as they were within like a short distance of his station. That's going to be something that you're going to
That
see
was key.
with
Yep. We
this
have to, that's
DC
important.
power because they could provide the electricity as long as it was in like a mile or so of the station. So he needed
Yep.
to keep on building these stations, and they become not necessarily cost effective. And that's going to be a
Yep.
big debate between AC and DC current that
Yep.
you're going to
So
see.
let's figure out. Let's see how all that whole thing starts. So his first big contract, to basically power up or light up a place, as opposed to a city or a town, it's actually a steamship. It's the Oregon Railroad and Navigation Company's new steamship called the Columbia. And it's the first commercial application of Edison's light bulbs in 1880s. He basically gets a contract where he's like, look, I'm going to put a generator on board of this steamship, which is a nice luxurious steamship, and I'm going to give you electricity for it. Light bulbs throughout. It's going to be super modern. Again, keep in mind, guys, everyone had like, candles at this point, right?
Yeah, it was oil
Um,
lights. Yeah,
yeah. So he does.
lamps.
And while he is inspecting this steamship that has this new generator and his electricity technology on there and bulbs, he actually comes across a young engineer that happens to be working for him, and this is when he meets Nikola Tesla. So Nikola Tesla's story is very different from Edison. Nikola Tesla actually is Serbian American. He is born in the Austrian Empire in 1850s, so he's about 10 years younger than Edison. And this guy is super well educated. He is educated. He's ridiculously smart. They said he spoke 9 languages. He also had a really intense memory. When he was in high school, he could do basic calculus in his head. That's how smart he was. He never finishes college. He drops out, but he went in for electrical engineering and mechanical engineering. They said in his mind he could envision an entire project, like dimensions of a project or of his
Yeah,
invention, and like he would just
he,
go
he
right to building it. There
he
was
could
no
see all the
drawing boards.
details. Yeah, he would see all the details, all the intricacies just in his mind. Yeah,
Yep, he never had to draw it. He'd be like, "All right, let's build this." What happens is he moves to France from Austria. He moves to France, and while he's in France, because of his background as an electrical engineer, he winds up getting a job in one of Edison's factories and machine works that is in Paris, France. And while he's working for Edison, again, he's just some younger worker, like Edison doesn't know him. But while he's working for Edison in Paris, he gets noticed by Thomas Edison's manager, Charles Batchelor, I guess. Batchelor, yeah.
yeah,
Because he's like overseeing this Paris installation, and he meets Tesla, and he's like, this guy's brilliant. Like, we got to bring this guy back to America, which he does. He brings him back to America, and Tesla immigrates in 1884, and right away he starts working um, for Edison's companies. And that's how he winds up being on this, what do you call it, on this liner for Thomas Edison. He winds up working on the steamship Columbia. And while he's like fixing different transmitters and other things, he meets Thomas Edison. But again, they're not on par with one another. But what
no,
happens
they're
is,
not friends. They're not
no,
buddies. They're
no,
not
no,
going to
no.
go
Yeah,
hang out and
Tesla.
talk. Not at all. They're
Yeah,
just aware of each other's existence.
exactly, because Tesla's like this young genius, I guess. But Tesla gets really, really upset because of the fact that he believes that what he's bringing to the table in trying to spread Edison's electricity, because remember, Edison's trying to pitch this idea of electricity being moved to cities and powering full cities, his version, his DC version of electricity. And Tesla's helping him out with that, but Tesla believes that he should have been getting a bonus for what he was doing. And they said that historians believe that's kind of what happened between the two, is that Tesla gets upset that he's not getting paid enough for what he's doing. So he basically winds up leaving Thomas Edison, and he starts working on his own version of how to bring electricity to the masses. Now, Tom and I are not mathematicians, nor are we physicists. So we're going to kind of skip the whole, like in the War of the Currents, we're not going to talk about the math behind it. But in the most basic, general sense, kind of what you just mentioned, Tom, the DC power that Edison is proposing is really low voltage, which means it's less dangerous. And what it does is it only travels, because it's low voltage, it could only travel about a mile or so at a time,
Yeah,
as you
far
mentioned.
away from its power point, from its
Exactly.
power
So
station.
you would have to build like some form of a transistor or some kind of a power supply every mile, right? Imagine like
Pretty
every
much, yeah.
mile you have like a power
And you have all
station.
like the wires, all the
Yeah.
wires coming from that going to the houses nearby. Yeah.
Yep. And now AC power, which is what Tesla kind of pioneers, and Tesla doesn't have the money for it, so he winds up getting together with Westinghouse, I think, is the company, and they really
Yes.
sponsor most of this. So his alternating current is what you guys have right now, what we're powering our computer on right now. Whatever you have plugged in your house when you look around right now, all of that is powered on essentially alternating current. That's what's in your house. And alternating current is a lot higher voltage. Because it's higher voltage, it could travel much, much further for cheaper amounts of money because you don't have to build these substations. But what Tesla figures out and creates, he creates this transmitter that basically lowers the voltage of the current before it enters the house. So that's why when you look at the poles, there's like these little transmitters before the wire goes into your house. So there's a really high current that's going between these wires. And then when it reaches to a pole next to your house, it is actually connected to this transistor that lowers that electricity and then brings it into your house. Again, considered potentially dangerous at the time because you have high currents going in between buildings, right?
Yes.
But
And Edison definitely wanted to say how dangerous it was.
yes,
And that was a big
yes,
propaganda campaign. Remember, he invents the electric chair to
yep,
show how dangerous AC current is. And look, this kills people. Well, yeah, and DC current would kill you too if you cranked it on someone's head. But
yep.
basically, they're really trying to show how dangerous it is. And does he have some concern how dangerous it is? It might kill people, possibly. All right, but more so, he's concerned with what it's going to do to his bottom line. How it's going to hurt his company.
Yeah. Well,
Because it's
because
cheaper with the AC.
yeah, it's cheaper with the AC. And Tesla
Cities
again,
like it better.
yeah, and Tesla doesn't have the same financial backing. Like he doesn't have the name, a notoriety
No,
as Edison.
Edison is famous. Yeah.
However, yeah, he has Westinghouse though. You know what I mean? Like he has JP Morgan starts to invest in him. So he is operating through other companies, companies that are basically seen by Edison as competition because Edison is trying to get full, like New York City. He's trying to get cities to buy his idea of moving power into buildings. And
Yeah.
here's
And
Tesla, this younger guy, and he's like, dude, I could do this cheaper. Yeah, it's a little more dangerous, but I have created this transistor that's going to lower the power before it
he
enters
said
your
it's going to
house.
make it safe.
Yep.
More dangerous only if you're touching the wires, but it's going to be less dangerous coming to the house with my transistors and everything like that.
Yep.
And it's because it can travel so much farther. It's just more efficient. It's a more efficient form
Yep.
of power.
But as you mentioned, this is kind of crazy, right? That like Edison goes out of his way to use his competitors' technology to build an electric chair to be like, look, guys, this could be used to kill people.
Look what this does to people. Yeah,
Yeah, and that's kind of
that'd be
also what the elephant thing comes into, like where
yeah,
they wind up killing the
exactly.
elephant, and he records it. So, um, what this word occurrence does, it kind of, I wouldn't say it does anything bad per se to Edison. It doesn't hurt Edison. I mean, Edison's super rich. This puts Tesla on the map. Like Tesla now has a lot of financial backing. And what Tesla uses this financial backing for is kind of what bankrupts him a little bit because he starts to really kind of push forth this idea of wireless technology.
Yeah,
Like the
transmit.
precursors to like
to Wi-Fi,
Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi
Yeah,
things of that nature. He wants to be, like you said before, being able to transmit sound, be able to transmit power, video, well, what we call videos or images, all
yep,
just basically. At this time, it's like almost like magically through the air.
yep. That was this
So
whole idea.
that's
Like
his
this is
idea. Yeah.
before radio's invented yet. You know what I mean? Like he actually gets upset and sues the guy that creates the first like long short rather the shortwave radio that sends a transmission across the ocean. Like he sues them that he took some of his ideas, and he does win some of those patents. But his view is like, how can I create wireless electricity, wireless conductor of power somehow? And he thinks that he could use the air, he could use the ground, dirt, the elements, really, to somehow move power wirelessly from one thing to another. And he is successful. By 1920s and 30s, he created a model where he was able to, and he showed this to his financial backers. He was able to power up two lamps in a dark room. He flicked a power switch, and there was a power source in the same room, but it wirelessly transmitted that power to these two lamps and turned the light bulbs on. And people are like, how is that happening? Like, there's no wires. That was the idea of like, today you guys have wireless chargers that you could put your phone on. That's what Tesla was really
I
kind
saw
of
it. I
pushing
saw
for.
Tesla. Yeah.
And he had JP Morgan financed him to create this humongous tower in New York. And this tower project, it was supposed to be like this intercontinental wireless communication power transmitter where you could transmit power from like one continent to another wirelessly. Like, if you think about it, this is, I mean, we're talking about if we could wirelessly transmit power to people's homes, like this is nuts, or across continents.
There'd be no wires. Like you think about
Yeah,
that,
it's
there would be no
crazy.
such thing like when a power storm comes and the tree limbs knocks down. Like
Nothing. No.
that's not going to happen. And it was close. Could have happened. Basically, the reason why it doesn't is because Westinghouse Electric gets in a lot of financial trouble,
Yep.
and then he has to basically Tesla has to basically
He runs out of money.
sell. He runs out of
Yeah.
money. He has to sell a lot of. He winds selling some of his motors. He winds up getting a large lump sum, but then spends all of that again on trying to create these things, buying his own materials, buying his own land, his own laboratories and stuff like that,
Yep.
paying his own researchers, and over time he just runs out of money because this is expensive to do this sort of stuff.
Yep. And we should also mention that Nikola Tesla is not as known as Edison, and his name today is more associated with the car, Elon Musk, than anything else. But Tesla really kind of becomes more popular. There's like a resurgence of him in 1990s, but for the
Yeah,
longest time, keep in mind, guys, he was like a big personality when he was alive. In 1930s, he's like on the cover of Times Magazine. Like this guy is considered one of the greatest inventors of all time. When it comes to, because think about it, the fact that we have electricity near power right now, like that's Tesla. That's not Edison. His alternating current. However, what ultimately happens to him, like I said, he racks up his debt like crazy. He gets thrown out of all kinds of apartments in New York City because he keeps on racking up his debt. He gets this like weird obsession with pigeons. Did you read about that? Like he starts
I saw that.
feeding pigeons,
Oh
and
yes,
then
yeah.
like pigeons start coming into this hotel room. Then he like opens windows and lets the pigeons into hotel rooms, and they start wrecking these hotel rooms. So he starts getting thrown out of these hotel rooms, and people are like, "All right, dude, like what's with the pigeons?" So yeah, so he basically dies because he's going to feed his pigeons when like a car hits him and like breaks his ribs. He's in his 80s, and then from there he winds up getting sicker and sicker and sicker, and like a little while later he winds up dying, which is kind of sad. But first of all, he had this weird thing. He didn't like people that were overweight. He apparently like fired people because he thought they were too heavy. I was like, okay, he would not do well in the 21st century. I can tell you that much. There is
Mm.
some interesting facts about these guys, though. When I was reading this, first of all, Thomas Edison's wives. Did you
Well, he
hear
had
how
three
he?
wives, right? Three wives.
I think Edison had two, but the way he proposed to them, the first
Oh,
one,
he had three wives. He had three
yeah,
wives.
the first one, he's like 20s. He's 28, I think. And he's just walking through his, what do you call it, Menlo Park. He's just kind of walking through and he sees one girl that's working there as like a typist or something. And she's 16 years old, right? And he's like almost 30. And he like walks up to her and he's like, hey, listen, so you think you like me? And she's like, what? If you like me enough, maybe you'll want to marry me. Cause like, if you want to marry me, like, we could get married like next Wednesday. And I'm almost quoting, guys, like I'm almost directly quoting as how he approached this 16-year-old girl. And she was like, what? He's like, you could tell me tomorrow, no big deal. And she goes home, talks to her mom, and said yes the next day. And she married him. Like, she didn't know him. Like, she worked.
They only met 2 months earlier.
She winds up giving him a few kids. She eventually dies when she's still young. She's like in her 20s. And then he winds up, when he's 40, he marries another 20-year-old. I guess he liked his wives younger. Thomas Edison does not like to entertain. He lets the wives do the entertaining part. He's very much like, hey, I'm just going to sit in my room. Him and Nikola Tesla, actually, they hardly slept. Tesla said he never slept more than 2 hours a night. He would take power naps once in a while, but that's it. And very similar to with Thomas Edison, like they actually moved his bed into his library and study because he never went home. That's what he did.
Just pass out there for a little power nap, then back to work.
This is crazy. Did you read about Edison's son, Edison Jr.?
Edison Jr., yeah. Well, he was basically not exactly the apple of his father's eye.
No.
Right? He wanted to be an inventor, but wasn't really good at it, right? And he became a big problem for his father. What he would do, he would get involved in a lot of what they would call like snake oil or shady products. Mm-hmm. And he would say, and he just wasn't associated with his father. Oh, this is the latest Edison discovery, and it wasn't Edison discovery, but it was It was the junior. It wasn't the senior that was discovering.
I mean, it was still Thomas. It
was Thomas Edison, but not that
one.
Thomas Edison that you were thinking about.
Yeah.
And his father took him to court to have him stop doing that. Because it was
he took him to court, and he got him to stop using his name.
Yeah,
he sued his own son and said, "You can't. Yeah,
you can't use my name." And to help him out, he would give him $35 a week, like an allowance, basically, in exchange for not using names. So he would still go around. He would use a different name, and he suffered from alcoholism, depression, ill health.
Imagine that your father's like, "Yeah, you're no longer. I'm disowning you, and here's some.
I'll give you some money. Just leave me alone." Type of thing. And he eventually does get a role in the company because of one of his brothers gives him a role in the company later on in life. But
crazy.
Yeah. It didn't go over very well for Thomas Edison Jr.
Nuts. Thomas Edison was one of the first people to make cat videos.
Oh, one of the first cat people, yes.
You could actually YouTube Thomas Edison's video of boxing cats from 1800s. Because, he made a lot of those short films with the camera that he invented, the motion picture camera. Have you ever been to Thomas Edison's?
I've been to Edison, New Jersey, but no, I've not actually been to any of his.
Oh, you got to bring the kids. It's so awesome. Like if you bring him to
yeah, my kids would break everything.
No, stop it.
Yes, they would.
No, if you bring him to Menlo Park, whatever it's called, it's so cool. It'd be
interesting. It'd be interesting.
It really is interesting. Plus, it's close to our house. His house is actually really cool. Like you could take the tour of his house. We actually did that a couple of years ago. We took a tour of his house, and weirdly enough, one of his daughters married somebody he didn't like, and they were like trying to disown her or something, and there was some really bad letters written to the daughter, like how much he hated her, and they found these letters hidden in like a little cubby in the wall 3 years ago in his house because someone was scanning walls, and they're like, wait, there's a hidden compartment here.
Well, you could see him as a person. You see him as not just this myth, but how he had his flaws just like anybody else did.
Anyway, that's all I pretty much got for these two guys. You got anything else?
The one thing is that I found about Edison, I know you're doing some fun facts at the end, is that he got into a very popular fad diet the last few years of his life where he wouldn't drink water anymore. He just milk. Every 3 hours, he would drink a pint of milk. And he thought that was going to restore his health, and it didn't exactly do that. So, he was very much he definitely understood you got to eat well and things like that. But
learn something every day. Yeah, I read that whole milk thing that he's just obsessed with drinking milk.
Yeah, every 3 hours, a pint of milk.
Ugh.
Enjoy.
I would get sick of that. Well, anyway, thank you so much, guys, as always, for tuning in to our podcast and listen to us have a nice little conversation about a historical topic.
Edison, the current wars, and Tesla.
That's right. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and we're going to be here again next week. So until next week, guys, enjoy.
Stay safe, everybody.
I I hope everyone enjoyed our podcast, and if you would like to email us, you can do so at historyteacherspodcast@gmail.com.